Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Women's Fittest. I'm super excited to have IFBB Pro Autumn Cleveland here with me today. Autumn, how are you doing?
I'm great, and thank you for having me on. This is a really cool opportunity. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. This is our 100th episode, so it's kind of special.
Oh my God, it's like 100 years old. It's like I won something.
I wish I had something to offer, just questions.
I like questions.
So you've had a really crazy year. I want to say that I love following your Instagram because you post a lot of stuff that's not just bodybuilding related. I don't know if you at some point want to talk about, I know you just started this journey with Accutane too, which I thought was
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm more than happy to share my experience so far because so many people shared theirs and everybody's is different. But yeah, we could definitely hit on that too.
Yeah, for sure. So I usually start the podcast with my guest with the question, what got you started in bodybuilding? And if you want to backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit about sports you played as a kid, because the epigenetic background is always very interesting to me as well. So
oh yeah,
back when, what got you started sports wise? And
the first sport that I played was none. I've never played, I'll say I've never been athletic. I tried. But even from when I can remember being little, like in elementary school, I was so terrified when it came to gym class because I didn't know how to like move. So when we had to play kickball or dodgeball, I was always getting hit in the face because I couldn't move fast enough. Like, I don't know what that was. I didn't have that athleticism that most kids have. I was really good at like climbing trees and stuff or like tomboy things, but you put me in anything that needed choreography and it was just like, I tried to avoid it at all costs, which is funny because I think when I was in grade school, like I wanted to be on the cheerleading team because I was like lighter, I could be like a flyer, but at that age, we weren't doing a whole lot of risky things. But then as soon as high school hit, or I guess middle school, I did have an interest in track and field, but this kind of ties into the whole bodybuilding thing. That was exactly the year that I started to get bullied really bad on my skinniness. And what sucks is like the sports that I expressed interest in, like cheerleading or track and field, that's where the bullies were. And so I didn't actually get into it to where I could learn the sports or learn, teach my body how to do these things because every day I was afraid of like getting beat up. So I'd actually like hide. So I think I also attempted tennis one time and I didn't actually get to participate as much. And that was where it started, like middle school. I was like 89 pounds. So it's a twig. And I was more scared of these girls. And so it took away from my pursuing sports. And that is when I turned to bodybuilding, was because I was getting picked on. And my dad's a police officer. And I went to him one time and I was like, what if these girls gang up on me? I can't defend myself. And they were like a year older. And of course, like being that small, I didn't feel like I could like physically stand up for myself. And that's when he started taking me to the gym with him and like teaching me how to lift weights so that I could like feel better about my body, like feel good in my clothes and in my own skin, but also feel like I could like defend myself. So that's what actually got me into bodybuilding, was sort of like in high school terms, like a need of survival. So that's where that started.
I want to interrupt you a second and just say that I think that's a really important message, just because I think so many women get into this sport, especially now with social media being so prominent, because they see a physique that they want to look like and immediately go into the gym trying to learn how to lift weights, but in a deficit, in a dieting mode. And if you just went in there thinking, I'm going to do whatever I can to get strong, it would just take you on a much more positive path. Don't you think?
Yes, I do. Because that's part of focusing on the process and not the outcome. You get the outcome because of the process. So I fully agree with that.
Yeah. So cool. So cool. So you started getting strong and feeling good about yourself.
Yes. And what's funny is even when I started, I didn't know anything about competitions. I just wanted, I guess, like, A, to stand up for myself, but B, the more I went to the gym, that was a very isolated thing. And I wanted to get away from people in high school. Like, I'm not a team player. I've never enjoyed team sports or group projects or anything like that. I've very much functioned independently and isolated best. And it's funny that I found bodybuilding because there's a responsibility there. You know, it's only, you only get out of it what you put into it. And I was happier being isolated as a bodybuilder, even in high school, than I was around other people, because I didn't feel at home or like I'd found my fit. And it was, I think I lifted for maybe a year with my dad before he introduced me to somebody. It was the first female bodybuilder I've ever seen in real life. And she was so nice and like, so it was intriguing what she was doing. And I was like, man, she looks strong. And so I started kind of like ask her questions and learn more about it. And she had done like 1 or 2 bodybuilding shows. And she, at some point she was like, you should try it. And I was like, okay, I guess, like, what do I have to lose at this point? And I can still remember like my first stage experience I was a few months past, I had just turned 16. So I was 16 in some months.
What year was this?
2004 was when I actually stepped on stage.
Okay.
For the first time. And when I did, it was crazy because some of those women were like my age now, like in their 30s. And I was like, man, I'm just a kid here. I have no business being here. And I threw on a suit and a tan and some shoes. And I stood up there. And for the first time, I was like, I think I belong here. It just felt like nobody was in my space to bring negativity to that. And nobody, like, it's like I was untouchable up there. I wasn't getting bullied. It was like, I felt really good about my body. I felt confident, and it was like, okay for me to be that way there in that stage setting, whereas I couldn't get that anywhere else in my life. And so that was where it just felt like I was at home there. And I just never left.
Do you feel like this, like, I think the bodybuilding community, especially for women, and I notice this as I connect more with women and with the podcast, like, we're just our own people, and it is such a team. Like, it's amazing. Like, you belong. Yes. It's like the opposite of Mean Girls. Like, you can sit with us, you know what I mean? It's so great.
It is great. And it's funny because like, my entire high school, even when I was graduating, I never had like groups of friends. I had maybe 1 or 2 friends that I had fun with. There's one friend particularly that I can think of that like she understood what was going on and she was there for me, as supportive as you can be for another person in high school. But the rest of that was like, I didn't join sororities. I didn't do, even in college, I didn't do things that other girls did. And what I don't know if today's bodybuilding community understands how well things are now, how good things are, compared to even like 10 years ago. And I've been doing this is going into my 19th year and I mean, competing, not just I lifted weights, like, I mean, from competing. And the world of bodybuilding is so different now because even 10 years ago, we didn't have that kind of support. And we didn't have, it's like you knew other bodybuilders existed, but you only knew it on show day. Yeah. And now the bodybuilding community is so connected and so supportive, and it's year round and it's all the time. And I think I hope that everybody realizes how lucky they are to have that now, because it wasn't that way. And I remember like in high school trying to bring my bodybuilding magazines and tuna for lunch. That just pushed people even further away from me. I mean, they told me how much my food stank, and they were like calling me, they were basing their ideas of my gender preferences on my muscularity. And they thought my bodybuilding books were like gross and weird. And it's like, why am I dealing with this in high school? In college, I just isolated further. I don't even remember having bodybuilding friends in college. Yeah. But it wasn't until like, bodybuilding began getting like popularity. Like there was a whole boom of, I think it's about the year that bikini was introduced. And then all of a sudden eating protein and squatting was so cool.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that because
don't you think like it was really focused on men? That's what you saw in the magazines.
Yeah.
The women were kind of toned down for like with shape and muscle and fitness. Hers, like, I mean, I've talked about this before. We'd see like Nicole Wilkins or Amanda Latona, Candace Lewis on some of the.
Oh my God, I love her so much.
I know.
But the standards have changed, but also like one thing that like 3 years ago? I guess it was my pro debut. I was just as nervous going into that show because I was intimidated by the elite women there, not because of what they did. It was because of what I had made up in my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go stand amongst these people who've been to the Olympia 1,000 times. And like, they're all good. And I was afraid that I was going to get there and everybody else was going to be on their high horse and I was going to be the new girl. And I couldn't have been more wrong. And I'm so like still blown away 3 or 4 years later at how nice every single pro was and how relaxed and how fun they are. And that was the moment that I realized that I was like, this is a sorority. This is a sisterhood because we've all suffered the same and we all belong here. And that was another kind of like realization that I was in the right place with the right people. And there's just this, I hate to break it down into pros and amateurs or divisions, but being a pro figure competitor is something I take pride in because of the mindset and the way that we really like lift each other up. And I wish everybody could see the messages that we send to each other and how uplifting they are and supportive. We're checking on each other year round, giving words of encouragement. And so like that was a difference that I didn't expect going into the sport because of how my experience with girls had been in the past.
You know how even social media, I mean, it does create this unity, but also we're, you know, like anybody who gets involved in this as a lifestyle is looked at differently. And, you know, we get tons of bullying and troll messages, you know, so it's the same. So I just think it's really awesome how, you know, it's like we were thinking, oh, I'm different. Like you said, I think men's bodybuilding is awesome and it looks beautiful and the same as, you know, and other people are like, that's so gross, it's disgusting. So it's like the people who thought this looked really cool, we all found each other and created this family. It's just, I love that, but we're still so different. And so the world thinks that's really, I mean, look at America, everybody's unhealthy, you know what I mean? So if you take that to the extreme, you're going to be really like pointed out as being very different, you know?
Oh yeah. And that's what like, you know, bodybuilding isn't for everybody, but how awesome of a thing is it that we get to connect and actually find our people. That's a phrase that I've had to say to myself over and over again. There's a million people in the world, millions of people in the world, and they're not all my people. But when I'm around my people, it's like, I don't need numbers, but it's like when you connect with people that are your people, there's just like you said, like a unity and like a power there, I think.
Yeah.
So that was the mistake I made, was thinking, oh, bodybuilding, it's lonely. It's a lonely sport. It is isolated and it is self focused, but you're not really alone.
Yeah. You get to be yourself. Isn't that what everybody wants? They want to follow
yeah
and get to be themselves.
I'm all about that. I love differences because to me, that's what makes the world go around and what makes life interesting is just, if we were all the same, how boring. And it doesn't challenge you. So
well, I remember this from when, you know, I think I started my Instagram in 2013, which is when it really started to pick up. And I remember saying that to somebody because, you know, I'd get so many troll comments like, you look gross, you know, and I just thought, how weird is it that you would like every woman to look the same? Like, why?
Yeah. That's funny.
There's not beauty in that. Like, and then who decides the standard? That's ridiculous, you know?
I think that's why I struggle with social media. My boyfriend has been so amazing and like, he knows how and when to push me to go beyond my comfort zones for like, I mean, social media is a very powerful tool and I'm really appreciative and grateful of it, but it is not easy it doesn't come easily for me. It's easier now, but like, I guess this goes back to my bullying background. I do have this thing where it's like, part of me really cares what other people think and being accepted. But at going into my adult life, and I would say I've worked more on this in the last couple of years, it's hard for me to say, I don't care what that person thinks and they may not accept me and I have to be okay with that. And it's like that people pleaser mentality. I've always been a waitress. And so it's like, you please people And you start to kind of get in this mode of like, how do I deliver myself as something that everyone will like? But it's been some hard lessons for me to say, like, you're not going to please everybody, and you don't have to, you're not supposed to. So when I do get those comments, I'm getting better at like just letting them go. But there's also part of me that still is like that girl that I was when I was in high school couldn't stand up for herself. And now that I can, I want to. Like, I really enjoy shutting people down when they talk to me in a way I don't accept. So that's really hard to control when I'm being a competitor and an IFBB official and a prep coach and running a business, multiple businesses. There's an image to uphold, but I'm still a person, and I just don't want to, I don't tolerate certain things now that I used to, but that is my way of like feeling empowered, I guess. And so social media can be a vulnerable place if I want it to be, but it's also like, I still have to protect myself within it.
Yeah.
Or I'll lose part of myself.
I appreciate their honesty so much, because I think it's a lot of things that people won't admit, because they think, you try to put on this attitude like it doesn't matter to you, like you're so strong and confident now, it's above you. But so many of us have come from, backgrounds of, trauma or that type of thing. And so we're still that person on the inside, and and you fight it every day. It's a recovery. It's not just like I'm better and I'm doing great now. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And I love the way that you said that. It is kind of like a therapeutic process. And I think it's okay to, like, this is something that I wish more people would consider. And now that I'm in it, like in this point, I think I can appreciate other people having gone through it when I didn't think about it. But like, you follow someone for a year or two or more. Think of how much personal growth that person may have experienced, and they're not the same person they were 2 or 3 years ago. But if you've grown with them, it's like you accept it, you support it. But as we evolve, it's like, sometimes I feel like people expect me to be what I used to be, but I'm not that person anymore. And it is okay for me to change and evolve and grow and change my mind and, think about things differently, or, share those experiences. And I feel lucky. I feel like I am supported, and I've got people who have grown with me for almost 2 full decades, which is insane to me that someone would stay connected with me for that long and allow me to change and grow. But then you've got other people who, it's almost like they expect you to be what they are familiar with. Yeah. And that can turn people off. And so, like, I don't get it anymore as much, but in the years that I made the most change, it was people saying, well, don't get too muscular. You're perfect where you're at right now. And in my head, I'm going, you haven't seen anything that I can do yet. I'm going to push this as far as I want. And it's like, during those times of change, it was like people saying, you're about to go too far. Don't undo it. And I'm like, I'm here to go far. So being okay with losing people that it's not really a loss, or like, your groups of people change as you change. And that's a hard thing to deal with social media too, because again, there's this kind of pressure there.
Yeah. Well, isn't it comical when I've had people make comments about stuff, from 10 years ago, especially for me, it was a traumatic time going through my divorce. And I know I was basically in survival mode. So I wasn't who I am now for sure. 10 years.
Yeah.
Me and
a decade.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Like, that's who you think I am. And like, I'm sorry, that's who you even thought I was, because when you're
sorry, you didn't allow me to change.
Well, and when you're going through something that's traumatic, or you're going through this change, it's like you were this person, who you are during that survival time isn't that person, and it's not who you're either. So it's like, you were with, like, you knew me when I was crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But what a cool thing. That's what I like. I like when I am a weird person. I am out there, and I feel crazy. And how cool that I feel comfortable enough now. And I attribute this all to my boyfriend, because he just has been he has become a part of me that makes my actual true colors come out. And I feel so confident in that with him, that I think outwardly I am more comfortable exposing those things. But how cool is it that I get to be myself and people are still willing to like hang with me, you know, let me be that, and they still accept me. But if I could go back and tell my 15-year-old self that, I wouldn't believe it. I'd be like, I can't possibly be myself. No one will like me.
Well, and you see it on social media because I mean, like, you know, I've had it with mine where I'll, you know, especially with like reels, I'll do silly stuff and like people choose to get offended. And it's like, it's just, you know,
you said that perfectly.
And they just leave. And you're like, really? So then you're thinking, well, you were really just looking for a reason to leave all this time. If this one thing was the, you know.
Yeah, you're choosing to be soft and sensitive, not me.
Right.
Funny.
Yeah. I'm like, can't we all just get along? So great. Well, I understand that struggle too of like wanting to be professional, but also like knowing that you're a freaking goofball and also, like you said, want to stand up for yourself when somebody's being a troll and you're just like,
oh my gosh.
Okay,
if it's something tied to my sponsors, I'm extremely careful with how I handle that. But if it's just something I put out there, the way I look at it is like, I can't imagine any of my sponsors or my overhead or people who I really care about what they think. I can't imagine them not supporting me standing up for myself.
Yeah.
But I do try to like watch my language and how I handle things. I try to do that most of the time, but I think I have a right to unleash whenever I want to. It's like, you know, and it depends on the person, I've learned to read past what they're actually typing and ask like, what is this person's intention? If their intention is to hurt me, I'm going to hurt them back twice. If their intention was to genuinely ask a question and it came out wrong, I can look past that. Or maybe they didn't know. I always try to give someone the benefit of the doubt, but when they push my buttons, they'll get the response. But I just try to, I know the easier thing would be just to delete. But again, this is a practice of me standing up for myself, and I practice with social media so that in actual interactions, and this is where it ties into stuff where like empowerment. I used to be the girl that like, if I ordered something from a restaurant and the server got it wrong, I would eat it anyway. And I realized I don't have to be rude, but I also don't have to settle. I paid for this and I deserve to have the meal that I ordered. But again, there doesn't have to be like a fault to that. So like, that's how I used to be. But social media, and this has actually been really hard for me to undo sometimes. Social media has made me bitter and callous, but that's not bad. Those are skills that I didn't develop early on because I was afraid of being a problem. And now that I've gotten more practice of responding in those ways, I've actually gotten better at protecting myself. And this translates into like actual public physical things. Like a couple of months ago, I was in prep and I get hyper aware of my safety in prep because everything is so delicate.
Yeah.
And this guy in Target, I was trying to read a nutrition label on a box. I was very concentrated and I could feel his presence coming down the aisle. And I thought, this guy is going to say something. Just prepare yourself. I could just tell. I've done this long enough that I can tell that like he was going to say something. But what I didn't expect was for him to reach out and grab my arm and my bicep and squeeze it. And I lost all control on that guy. And I blew up and I was yelling in the middle of Target and I caused a scene because he came up and touched my body. And it didn't matter that he only touched my arm. And his excuse was, he said, I'm an old guy. I didn't mean anything. And I said that I don't care.
Yeah.
That's not justifiable to me. You can't come into someone's space, especially during COVID. So I was very upset and angry because my boundaries were crossed.
Yeah.
But afterwards I thought that was kind of embarrassing. But at the same time, I thought I wouldn't have done that before. I would have just taken it.
Yeah.
And all of these little practices of me standing up for myself and being combative and being not pleasant, I used to view that as a problem, but now I'm like, man, I'm way better at like handling interactions like that instead of just being the girl that takes it. And I think that's important for women to feel okay to do those things because there are far worse situations that women can be in and not feel okay to do that. And that's terrifying to me.
Well,
If you can't feel comfortable to practice to stand up for yourself through words and typing a keyboard, how are you going to stand up for yourself when you're alone in a really dangerous situation?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're accused all the time of overreacting. And I think
Right.
this is what the last 5 or 10 years has been with social media. I know for me personally is finding that balance between what my reaction should be, the appropriate reaction. This is something I talked to a therapist about. I thought, some people can just ignore stuff. I can't just ignore stuff. I mean, I have gotten to the point where I'll be like, you know what, this isn't, I'm just going to delete it. It's not worth my time. Maybe I'll talk to the person. You have to figure out. And I feel like if you've gone through something traumatic where, like you said, like your background, you're overreacting. And then you're like, no, I have to figure out who needs my attention, how much, and how. And so it's a balance of reeling it back in so you can do the appropriate responses.
And that you said that so perfectly. And like, I am the first person to say I am sensitive to these topics or these subjects or these things or feelings. But I think I've learned from my boyfriend, he is so thick-skinned, like almost the exact opposite. And it's cool because being with him for 10 years, I am starting to develop my thick skin. And I'm like, man, I never thought I would get here. But it's as much of a process as like, you look at bodybuilding and where someone started and where they are now, you would just think they were like that.
Yeah. Well, you think about where, even with this on this topic, you think, what would I like my reaction to be? And I think about people who I admire, who have talked to me about, like you said, you think about how maybe your boyfriend would react and you go, how would he do it? Okay. How would I do it? Let's figure out what would be best in this situation. So sometimes
we do team up and tackle and discuss these things because we always offer different perspectives. And so some things are just misunderstandings and he kind of helps me he's taught me how to figure these things out a lot better. Yeah. And you're right. There's times where that's not really like even necessary, or you can't hear tone of voice in text. Like a lot of things get lost in text. Yeah. So that is probably one of the bigger challenges that I've had to learn in business and social media. Yeah. Is that.
Well, they communicate, I mean, this is probably not the best way to say it, but I'm like, people communicate weirdly where you're just like, I have no idea what you're, and then if they explain what they're saying, you would think, oh, I would never say that way. So it's like trying to figure out somebody else's style of communication. And it's really mind-boggling to think like, okay, most people don't understand. Just like if you make a joke, like people don't, they'll offer advice and you're like, I'm kidding, you're like,
something doesn't match.
No. Yeah.
I noticed that too with like just public in general. The way that not just people, but like women specifically, if I cut out a slice of like 10 years ago versus now, I've noticed a progression in positive things coming out of women's mouths in public now, as opposed to like years before. And it started out like derogatory, like an actual insult. And they would put a smile on their face and say it. And they're like, oh, I'm just playing. And I'm like, no, you're not. But then over time, I think there was this thing where they just didn't know how to say what they wanted to say. And it came out as like a super weird comment. Guys do this probably more than women now, but women, it seems like they're getting more comfortable just coming up and saying what they intend or asking what they want to know, as opposed to like some like backhanded compliment thing. Yeah. And so I've also noticed in the last 2 years that women, especially older women, will come up and say just the sweetest, nicest things out of nowhere. Whereas like 10 years ago, it was the opposite. It was like not acceptable, or you'd get some side eyes or some like weird looks and stuff. And so I think the rest of the world, because fitness and bodybuilding have gotten so popular now I think the rest of the world is conditioned on how to talk to us better. They're more prepared now than they were like 10 years ago. And so those are other things that I think that I don't know if today's bodybuilding, if they're like new to it or younger generations, they didn't have to go through those things, and I wouldn't want them to. They just happen less and less now, I've noticed. And I think the rest of the world is starting to just be more aware of what we go through in order to communicate with us better.
I agree 100%. Well, and I don't get the troll comments that I used to get.
Yeah.
When I first started my Instagram, because like you said, I think it's a lot more common. People, I mean, even if you're not in that community, you're going to see stuff on your explore page or whatever, if you follow anything fitness. So it's like, yeah, we're everywhere now, people.
You can't stop us. I love it.
So great. So let's talk about your competition history a little bit. And else I want to, when you're done, if you want to send me your YouTube link that kind of tells your whole story.
Oh yeah, the documentary.
Yes, I want to make sure I put that in there so that people can do a deeper dive into your back.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I could definitely do that.
Because it's been such a journey. Like, you have just been fighting. This is the nickel and diming that it has been for you over the last 19 years or whatever to get your pro card and now be on the pro level, which is probably why it took so long for you to realize like you're one of those girls, because it took so long to get there.
I'm only, no kidding, the last 2 weeks I've taken as reflective time. I'm only just now processing what I even did this past year. And I'll tell you something crazy. I don't want to take away from your question, but when I do get to that point, like, it's funny that I spent 15 years chasing this pro card. And even when it happened, I didn't feel like I'd actually accomplished it until just last fall. Like, even till last fall, I'm like, am I a pro? Like, I don't know. And so I'm really big on identity shifts. And so it is funny that it's like I'm on some weird delay, but I only have just now gotten my mind to shift my identity, accept with myself the level that I'm trying to be at and become that.
When you think about how hard it is for other people to understand personal growth, and then you're like, I don't even recognize my own personal growth sometimes. So of course you're freaking confused.
Right. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing any more than anybody else.
So it's just like somebody losing, 100 pounds over a period of time. They still maybe feel like an overweight person, because you got to have it.
Absolutely. It's the exact same thing. And, well, I don't want to I'll start talking about something else, but let's go back to your main question.
It's fine. Let's start with, let's just do like kind of a brief timeline. You first competed in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
How many shows? And then what year was it that you got your pro card?
Oh, I couldn't tell you how many. You mean how many shows I've done ever?
Yeah. I mean, to get to that pro card. Well, how many years was it? 2004? 15
years. It took me 15 years to actually get what I set out to do in the first place.
Were you competing multiple times every year?
Not initially. I'm sorry. The first year, I think I did 2 shows, like one in the spring and one in the fall, because back then we didn't have all the shows that we do now. And also back then the standard wasn't where it is now. So you could step on stage every couple of months in the beginning, because the degree of muscularity wasn't present then.
Yeah.
And so like you didn't have to put your body through as much, I guess, as people do now.
Yeah, the bulking,
yeah,
the growing process.
Yeah. And what's funny is when I was, there have been a few times where this has happened where I have to say, which do I choose? And right around the time that I was in high school and I started bodybuilding, I was also I started as a Hooters hostess. And my parents, it's funny, I got an opportunity to get in the Hooters calendar, and my parents actually pulled me out of school one day to take me to this Hooters calendar shoot, because it was a big opportunity. And then I started doing the Hooters pageants, the swimsuit pageants. So I'm 17 years old on this international Hooters swimsuit pageant stage, And I'm like trying to do one, be marketable in that way. But I was also trying to like get bigger for bodybuilding. And I did my best, but like at the same time, I didn't have the resources that people have now. Like if I wanted to do a bodybuilding show, I remember the first time my dad had to ask, like through word of mouth, get this one show promoter's email, and the show promoter's girlfriend emailed me like how to buy protein and like a basic cutout like chicken and rice kind of diet, and like our suit options then were like way different. And so like you couldn't just go order things the way you do now. You had to know somebody who knew something. And so like back then, resource wise, there wasn't a lot. And so like even with show preps or like show planning, that didn't exist. There weren't prep coaches then.
Yeah.
And so there was a point where I'll tell you, this is a really funny thing. I did like 2 shows a year, I think, until I got into like maybe college. And that's where I had to choose, where I was like, okay, do I want to be a swimsuit model or do I want to pursue bodybuilding? And so I went with bodybuilding because I just didn't fit the mold of the standard girl anymore. And so I thought I was doing better, and I was like, okay, I'll just do 1 show a year instead of 2 or something, because I started to learn like, oh, you do have to build muscle. It does take time. But of course I have like an 18-year-old metabolism. I couldn't put weight on to save my life. And one of my college professors was actually one of my judges also. And he said to me, I came into class, this was like my sophomore year, I think. I sat down with like my books and my protein shake for class. And he said, are you going to do the Kentucky Muscle this year? And I said, yeah. And he gave me a look that was kind of like the dad, all knowing, like, I don't know if that's wise. And I was like, oh my God. Like he didn't say a word. Just the way he looked at me, I was like, maybe I shouldn't. And I did anyway.
So he wanted you to take time off to grow.
Yeah, he was trying to help me and understand that I needed more time and a lot more work. I just didn't understand. And so I stepped on stage, and now he's my judge, not my teacher on that day. And there's only so much a judge can say at the time because of like, what's appropriate. And so I went to prejudging, and I did not do well. And it was the worst feeling. I looked down at the table, the judging table, and he looked at me and he just shook his head. And to me, it was like a teacher put in like a big red F on the paper, like I had failed. And I was like, oh no, he tried to tell me and I didn't listen, and now I'm not doing well. And I went up to him after prejudging. I was like, what do I need to do? And he turned around and he said, if you want to go anywhere in this sport, you have to get bigger. Yeah. And that was the first time anybody had said anything like that to me. And I was like, okay. I was like, what? I think that was the turning point where I understood that you don't need to do 1 million shows every year.
Yeah.
And so I did start to take more time off in between shows, because I was finally getting an understanding of like prep, what we call prep now, or off season or improvement season now. Just back then it didn't have labels or sections like that. And I had the girl who introduced me to bodybuilding, she taught me a lot, but this was even before, like I wouldn't say that I had like strategic prep plans around year round. It was just like, hey, it's time to do our 12-week cut now. Like, and she did really well with that stuff, but we just didn't, that's just not what it was then.
Yeah.
And so I think every year since that, I had done like 1 show a year, thinking I'm doing the right thing by like taking more time. But I was also trying to survive college and sort of be normal. Like I was still trying to like have a social life, a date, like go out and stuff. And what I realized in retrospect was like, I only kind of half-assed bodybuilding because I was still trying to live my life. And at some point, I think I started to compete just for something consistent, yeah, that I could count on at the time.
So was it, you had a period that wasn't really improvement. It was just trying to be consistent with, and competing kept you in the lifestyle a little bit better.
Yeah. And like I said, like I clung to it because I loved it. And that's where I felt, no matter what was going on in my life, I always felt like I could count on bodybuilding. And at the worst times where I felt like everything was falling apart, and I was like, am I going to be okay? You know, I had like no money, trying to work 3 jobs, in and out of relationships, and like all those changes that leave you not feeling like you're on the right track. I never felt that way with bodybuilding. So I was like, well, this was going to keep me together in the meantime. So, not necessarily competing, just bodybuilding in general.
This was your strength source, right? You're like, what do I do to feel like I'm still strong and in control of my life, right?
Yeah. And it's like, I would get lost, but bodybuilding was always just stable. It was the one thing that didn't change on me. And I could always trust it. It would always be there for me. And it didn't matter how I felt or how much I had grown or changed or what all was falling to pieces. It's like, it was just something you know, it's funny, I'm saying this out loud to you right now. And I just realized like, that was where I could count on myself.
Well, you walk into the gym and it's familiar. You know what to do there exactly every time. You know what I mean? Like there's really that's controlled. It's, you know, and when life is out of control, there's your control, you know?
And that's what it, when you break it down into its purest form, that's what it is. It's the one thing that I could control. And so, that actually went all the way into when I just had graduated college. I got the job I thought I was supposed to have as a personal trainer. So I had some life and relationship shifts, and it was like, I thought I was going one direction with my life, but then everything just kind of shifted really fast. And all of a sudden I was like by myself in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I had no idea of like what my future was supposed to be. I was like questioning myself and my job and like just all these other things in life. And I was so like tight on money that I couldn't even afford internet for my apartment. And so I just had all these bodybuilding books next to the bed, and I was like, well, I guess I'll read them. And that was the first time I started to really like study bodybuilding. Like I had the books, but I hadn't like delved into it. What
year was this?
It was 2000, the end of 2011, starting 2012.
That's when things really started to pick up with the industry.
Yeah. And it was the first time that I actually started to learn for myself. And I was like clinging to some stability at that point because, like I said, everything had shifted upside down. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try my hand at coaching myself and just see if I can do it. And if I keep getting better, then I'll get on stage. And I did that for like 3 or 4 months. And then I guess finally, with my own understanding and being completely isolated, that was the first time that I took things into my own hands and did a show. And it was also the first time I'd ever won my class. It was just my class. I didn't win the overall, but I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And so I think that was also the year that I did my first national show. So that kind of just like introduced me more to like understanding how and why to be like more wise and strategic about my plans, and gain that confidence that like, okay, I am supposed to do this sport. And so I went from like doing a bunch of shows in the beginning, not really knowing what I was doing, but then that one hit and I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do now. How do I keep getting better? And so that's when I kind of bit off more than I could chew. And I went to nationals for my first national show, and I did prep myself. And that was 6 months after that first win that I told you about.
Yeah.
And it was a nightmare. I showed up in such bad shape, but I didn't understand. Again, I didn't understand about taking time off.
Yeah.
And it was go ahead.
I just want to say that I love this message because I think people can really get caught up in competing and, you know, like, well, I just need to show up better, but you can't show up better because the better happens in the off season. That's why it's bodybuilding, right? I mean, unless you can come in a little tighter because you didn't nail your conditioning.
It does depend on what the feedback is.
Yes.
And, and you're right. Like that was about when things started to become more popular. And that's when prep coaches started to be called prep coaches, not gurus, not underground gurus that you had to dig to find. And so I had done that. What?
I do want to ask you about, because you had talked about how you kept showing up, and then, you know, they were like, you need to grow. Now, what do you think about, where the division has gone, because it's funny how it's funny how like I feel like you get women who are like, I want to do a bodybuilding competition, but I'm too big for bikini. But I feel like there's such a vast space between a bikini body and a figure body. So I almost feel like it's like you have to have a bikini body, like that shape, or you really need to spend a lot of time building muscle, because to just start out at figure now is, I think, a lot more muscular than people think it is.
It has evolved. And in fact, like when I first started doing this, there was women's bodybuilding and figure. Bikini didn't exist. And about the time you're talking about, like 2012-ish, maybe 2011 or 9, I can't remember. It was somewhere in the 2000s-ish that I meant earlier ones that
I think 2012 was when women's physique came about. So that's probably
bikini must have been like 2009, maybe 9 or 10.
9 or 10. Mm-hmm.
I think so. Yeah, if that's correct. So then bikini came about, and then women's physique, and we rode with that for several years, and now wellness.
Yeah.
And I think maybe some people don't have an understanding of this too. And it's not, to me, it just makes sense. It's like a formula. Like if the IFBB and NPC is a business and competitors are the customers, the IFBB provides for us what customers need. That's why the sport keeps opening more doors. They did it with men. They used to have just bodybuilding, and then here comes men's physique, and then classic physique. And they want to please their customers so that they have them. It is a business. And it's a smart one. It's a very good, strong business. And that's kind of the nice part, knowing that if you don't fall into one of these categories, and when I say that, I mean genetically, a door will probably open up. Yeah. Now, that being said, like if it didn't, it relies on our judges to work within those parameters. And so the standards that are set for each division are reinforced by the judges. And I get a lot of people who want to consult, and they say, what division should I do? And I don't actually look at their muscles first. I look at their bones, because you can't change that. You can't change your bones. You can't change your muscle insertions or your genetic shape. And so that's what I go off of first, because I started as a really tiny figure competitor, but I had a decent genetic shape for it. Mm-hmm. And when I could have done bikini, it didn't exist. So I didn't even get to explore that. But by the time bikini came around, I started to learn that like my heart was in figure, and my heart always has been and always will be. So at that point I was like, I think I'm going to keep fighting to build muscle, even though that's not the easy route. It would have been easier for me to do bikini, and I probably could have with my genetic shape back then. But I knew that what I wanted to do was going to be the harder road, and I was willing to invest in that and commit to it. And I've always like fought bikini, because people used to ask, they're like, are you figuring bikini? In my head, I'm like, why would you even ask that? Like, I'm a figure competitor, duh. But like, I didn't have enough muscle for them to even know. So like, once you figure out what your genetics are and then match those with what the standard is for the division, then it's a little bit easier to kind of figure out where you fall, because this is something else I think people underestimate, is the value and the power of developing good relationships and communications with the judges. The judges want people to succeed, and they want to help. And I know a lot of judges who bend over backwards to purely help, because they are passionate about our sport and they really care about our competitors. And they're willing to take their time and give advice to people who will listen. And so when you've got people who have a genetic shape for a division, and maybe they need a little bit more muscularity or more conditioning, that's why you compete and then develop these relationships with the judges, so that you can get feedback and guidance to shortcut your guesswork and just do it. And once I started to understand that piece, that helped me be more strategic with my show planning. So it kind of ties back into the like, how often do I compete? And so I'd say the national road was kind of like where I discovered that I had the potential to go further, but I was still hitting that ceiling of like not being muscular enough or conditioned enough. And 2 or 3 times I had another coach involved, but I think there were several times where I tried to do it by myself. And it was kind of off and on like that, like kind of, I would say that I was a little bit lost in my national chapter also, trying to figure out what I needed to do or what would be best, because it's not necessarily a probability thing. It's not like the more shows you do, the more likely it is you're going to get a pro card. And I started to learn that within that time frame. And so I remember like I think I did pretty decent. If I hadn't gotten top 5 so many times, I probably would have given up on it. But I kept getting top 5s and I was like, okay, there's something there. Where is it? What am I missing? And that was at a point where I was doing it by myself for like a couple of years. And Gary Udit came up to me and it was in the middle of a regional show. It was like I had just won my class and I was about to go on for overall. And here Gary pops out around the curtain and he says, we need to talk. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm in trouble. What did I do? I felt like it was in the principal's office. And I was so nervous. It was like right before the overall. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I went out there and I did not get the overall. I think I missed it by like a placement. And so I went and I talked to him after the finals and I said, what do you want to see me about? And he basically asked like if I was prepping myself. And I said, yes. And he gently put it to me. He's like, maybe it's time to get a coach, like another set of eyes. Yeah. And I thought about that and I was like, I didn't know who to pick. I was like, I don't trust people. Because now there's all this like booming of prep coaching and how do you know who's legit or not? And when I prepped myself, I didn't have to worry about that stuff. But then when I thought about it, I was like, who would I pick as a coach? But then I really listened because I thought he didn't have to do that. He did not have to come back there and talk me into hiring someone to help me if he didn't see potential too.
Yeah. And
that was probably one of the first times that I realized I was like, okay, I'm not just making that up in my head. I need to take this more seriously. And that was the year that I think I had taken more than a year off. That was 2017. And I took like 2017 and a lot of the beginning of 2018, like off from the show. So I think that was the furthest stretch between shows I had. And in that time, I hired my coach who I'm with now, Shane. And that was another chapter, like that was going into that next, we're at the top of the national chapter here, fighting for the pro card now. But this time I had help, like actual guidance.
So my question for you through that is, do you think it's better now with everyone having all the resources that they have to try to figure their body out on their own for a while, or to hire a coach right away?
That is, I don't have an answer that's this or that for that piece. But what I do tell people, because I've written articles on this, because I always look at things from a competitor standpoint and from a coaching standpoint, because I'm both. And I listen to what the judges say. I always get them involved. If I don't know the answer, I always go to a judge and say, what do you think? And with choosing a coach or not, like not everybody needs a coach, especially in the beginning. But a coach is a tool. And so if you have the tools and you enjoy and understand utilizing them, then I think people should do that first. And that was kind of my thing. Like I had to test myself and really get really honest with myself, which was very difficult, and ask myself how much I actually, what tools did I actually know how to use. And right before I hired Shane, that was the last time that I prepped myself. And again, I just didn't come in at my best. And this is after like years, 15 years of me trying to do it off and on with some help or by myself or whatever. And finally, Derek, my boyfriend, he said, maybe it's time to bring somebody else in the picture. And I was like, okay, I'm willing to do that. But all that summer, while I was trying to figure out who I was going to hire, I also had to have like a little come to Jesus with myself and get very honest with where I was slacking off and lacking, and let go of my own excuses and kind of like get rid of all the autumn BS that I was telling myself, and also let go of my need for control. So I was like, I've got to get really uncomfortable and vulnerable and raw here and trust myself in someone else's hands. And I had to go through that process before I could hire a coach again, because I couldn't walk into a relationship, especially with somebody like Shane, who I knew was going to help me get to my next level, and carry my baggage with me. I had to like let all of that go. And I had to let go of what I thought that I knew. So I had to let go of a lot of my ways before I could hire a coach. And if I had carried that over into this new relationship, I don't know that he would have been able to work with me in the way that was possible. I would be like resistant to some things or not trusting some things. And so like, that's something I don't think people consider when they go to hire somebody. It's like, how ready are you to be coached?
Yeah.
And I've got some clients come to me and they were like, I'm willing to do whatever you say. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be able to teach this person a lot. And I, honestly, like right now, I think all of my clients are like that. But in the prior years, I'd have people come to me and I knew they didn't trust me from the beginning, or I knew that I was going to tell them to do one thing and they were going to do something else and either tell me or not, or they were going to be resistant to my guidance.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That,
and so it's not all about bones and shapes and muscles and genetics. It's about, where that person is and like readiness and habits, like eating or training habits and like knowledge and experience, but then also just mental, emotional, and spiritual willingness and readiness too.
Yeah. Are you ready to get rid of your excuses? Are you ready to trust? It's like going into a classroom. You have to sit there and be taught. You don't get to stand up next to the teacher and teach with them.
Oh my God, what a perfect analogy. Yes. That is a perfect, yes. That.
So yeah, I think that's really, it's you did answer the question and you answered it perfectly, because I think these are questions people need to ask themselves and be honest. Like, if you don't know where you're going, and that's usually where a lot of people are, they hit this bottom or a plateau and they're just like, I don't know where to go. I'm going to hire a coach. But are you going to hire a coach with the mentality that you're now giving up all control? And the control really is focused on what you can control, which is all the basic 5 variables of sleep, stress, diet, nutrition, and water. That's where control is focused now in doing the plan. And then hopefully you have a coach that is explaining to you along the way what they're doing so that you are learning and are able
to.
Yeah.
That should always be an open door in a relationship. And it's funny because I've also recognized people's needs for different types of coaches and what their needs are. And that's why, like, when someone asks for me to prep them, we go through an entire process for me to make sure that I'm, so that we both are on the same page of our expectations, because I'm not going to present myself as a coach that's not my style or that's not what I do. And I'm pretty open-minded and I'm still growing myself and learning and experimenting. But there's just certain things that I won't do. And there's certain things I need to admit that I'm not. And it's no different than if you're going to date somebody. And if at first they lay out on the table, they just lay out all their flaws and are very candid. That's how I start my relationships with my clients. Yeah. I'm like, here's what I'm not comfortable with, what I'm not willing to do. And here's where I'm not experienced. And if you're okay with that, then we can go to the next step. But I also need to know from them what their flaws are, what they're open. Like, we start out just bare bones. Here's what we are, and here's what we can gain out of this. And then we'll take the next step forward. I'm very, it's like an interview on both sides. Oh, because we need to match.
100%. And I'll shift people to other people, or I'll be like, I can't help you. My assessment form is over 100 questions so that I can, cover all those bases. And then I go over, this is what I can help you with. This is what I can't help you with. Because in the past, I have accepted anyone, and sometimes
it doesn't always go well.
Let's say freaking nightmare sometimes, because you're like, for me, I can't accept people on too far of either end of the spectrum, meaning too much hand holding, too much time, where it's almost like a life coach where you're constant, because my clients have access to me anytime, but they don't access me, on a daily basis or multiple times daily.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other end of the spectrum too, as well, it's like you might be too advanced for me, and I'm going to refer you to.
Oh yeah. I have so much respect for professionals who utilize other professionals. Like if I don't, and I want everybody to be successful. I want everybody to have a good experience, including myself. And if I don't think that I can actually provide for this person what their needs or potential is, I am going to send them to someone else. That's the right thing to do. That's the integrity of being a professional. Yeah. And it's funny because like, I have no problem doing that. I feel way better about saying, I can't help you the best. I don't think that I'm going to be able to get you where you need to go or in this way. Let me connect you with someone who can. And let's see, Shane and I have been together for 2000. I hired him in 2017. What year is it? That's 2022. So we've had that many years, and he is still to this day the perfect complement to what my needs are, because I am a prep coach. And the phrase that always sticks in my head is like, even a doctor needs a doctor. And when I hired Shane, I said, I want to learn to become a better prep coach, so that this isn't just you telling me to eat something. I want to grow and get better. And so like, I want to learn from you. Yeah. And he has just constantly taught me all kinds of things, and I can bounce ideas off of him. And the great part is I feel like a team with him, and that's what my needs are. I don't need someone to tell me every little step. I need someone to keep my head on straight and not second guess myself, or to help me manage, I manage everybody else, but who manages Autumn? And so it's like his guidance for me is very simplistic, and I would almost say minimal, but that's what I need.
Yeah. You just need to stay in your lane. Somebody
absolutely. Yeah. So he's very complimentary to like the way that I function, but I can ask questions and he can explain them to me really well. And so I can learn even more, but that wouldn't work for some people, because some people do need the minutia covered. Well, I think they need other information, or they have other questions, or they need more guidance, or I'll just say different guidance.
I think it's typical for a high level athlete. I've talked to Brooke about this a million times. She's like, I'm easy to coach. I just don't want to get in my own head as I'm getting towards the end of prep. And that's when you need somebody to just say, no, you're not small. No, you're on the right track. It's not the learning process that, I was thinking you said about picking your clients. It's the same for me, that I choose people that I am also going to learn from, because if I'm not continuing to learn, so it has to be within those parameters of, no, I already know how to do this, or no, I don't want to put this much energy into brand new. I know where I need to learn more. And that's with people who are at this level, but not beyond this level. And
And even in the beginning, when I first started working with Shane, he did break things down a lot for me because at that point I would say I was still in the green like phase pretty much. And he never made me feel like a beginner, but like if we broke this down in the beginner to intermediate to advanced, in the beginning, he provided what I needed, which was instruction, and I needed things broken down. But now anymore, it's like so short and simple, and like just the purest, easiest form. But it took us 4 years to develop to get to this point. And so now I feel like it's like a team co-discussion of like show planning, or it's cool because he'll ask me now, like, hey, what do you think? Or, I feel more comfortable to say, hey, can we try this? Whereas in the beginning, I was like, you just tell me what to do, because that's what I needed. And he did. Yeah. And that's what I noticed with my own clients. Like now in years 2, 3, and 5, it's like we are more of a team joint decision, as opposed to me just telling you what to do, because we're both learning your bodies.
Well, you've built that relationship, you've built that trust, and it's almost like, when you know somebody and you can start to finish each of their sentences, you're on the same page. That's how it should be, but it takes
it does. And so like, I don't know if a lot of people stick with the same coach long enough to really get there. It's easy to switch coaches because something didn't work, but the longer you're with that coach, the more understanding you guys have. You just function so much more fluidly. But and people, there are times where it's appropriate to switch coaches, but some people, I do have an idea in mind when I hear that someone's had like 10 prep coaches. I've been doing this for 18 years and I've had 3.
Yeah.
4 if you include myself, but I've had one female coach, another male coach who did a great job, and then my current coach now.
It's a huge red flag when you get, have you ever had, that's one of my questions. Have you ever worked with a coach before? And they're like, yeah, I've worked with 6 different coaches. You're
How
like,
many? Like red flag.
Coach hopper.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
and that's when I honestly, like when it comes to that's at a point where I say, well, maybe we can figure out what actually needs to occur before you hire another coach, including me. Like, don't hire another coach until you can figure these things out.
We're program hoppers. People do the same thing. And they also don't get results from that. Oh, maybe I need to change my split and do it this way. Maybe I need
my gosh.
Say, and it's that's women spinning their wheels. Every new 6-week program, this will be the one. It's like, no, you need to freaking stick with something.
That is actually something I preface before I'll let anybody even hire me. I tell them, I'm not here to entertain you. I do what works. What is solidified works through years of replication, of experimenting and research and support. And so like, I tell them up front, I'm like, I'm not going to change your program every 6 weeks. We will change if it's necessary. Like if I've got clients who are having an injury or an illness or a health issue or whatever, we change their program when it's appropriate, but I'm not going to change it just to change it because I know that consistency works.
It's repetition.
And I'm thankful when my clients trust me. And I've had some people who don't trust me, and that's okay. We've just gone different directions and I still support them. But I can tell when someone doesn't trust my suggestions or protocols. Not that I know everything. I'm not a perfect prep coach. And like I said, I'm still learning things, but I do instruct that for a specific reason to kind of save them all the trouble that I struggled with and trying to figure out what works. And so I let them know that up front, like, I'm not going to keep you entertained. I don't care if you get bored. That's not what this is about. And if you want an entertaining coach, here, let me refer you to someone else. Because I don't do that. You
can buy 12 different influencers, 6-week programs and stack them on top of each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is very frustrating. And that is exactly what you said. You change things as needed, not necessarily as desired.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, just to interject this with one of my favorite things that is very good friend of mine and someone I really highly respect. It's one of our judges here in Kentucky. His name was Jimmy Hornback. And he said this phrase one time, and it has served me so well, like over the years, but he said, is your goal still your goal? And if it is, you work toward that. You do things that make sense leading up to that. So like if your goal is to put on muscle, then all of your actions should align with that goal. But if your goal is to put on muscle and you're doing some things toward building muscle and the rest of you is trying to keep lean and overly condition and deplete, well, that's not in alignment. And I've had to use that a few times to be like, Autumn, what are you actually trying to accomplish here right now? What's your focus?
Yeah.
And that focus shifts and it changes, but everything that I'm doing should still lead into that goal at that point in time, not a little bit. And then the rest of myself is going to other areas or actions.
Well, the repetition is where the struggle is. You know what I mean? There's in the monotony. That's, like, I don't know, any long, arduous journey in order to get somewhere. It might not necessarily be fun, but you have to learn to love all the elements that get you to the journey, even if it's not exciting, which it won't be,
Right. And it's so funny you said that because a couple months ago, a woman walked up to me in the store and she goes, how do you stay motivated? And I said, I don't function off of motivation and inspiration. For me, the longer I do this, the more aware I've become of this. I don't do this out of motivation because I have fun doing it all the time. There is an actual pain in me if I don't reach my highest potential. It will hurt me if I don't get to where I set out to go and that I know that I can go. So now this is more of an avoiding pain and settling within myself because I know that I can do it. I have power in me to do it. And if I don't discover that, I will resent it for the rest of my life. And this, it's kind of goes like to where I'm talking like a weird person, but I feel comfortable to express this, that like bodybuilding is my tool and my platform right now to discover my humanly abilities. But it's not going to be that platform forever. I'm not going to compete for the rest of my life. It's just what I have right now to test myself and evolve and become the type of human that I know that I'm supposed to be. And I'm getting closer to that. Just this year, I just had that shift where I was like, okay, I'm in the lane that I need to be in. Now, how do I gain speed and precision? Because when I was 15 years old, I said, I want to go to the Olympia by the time I'm 35. And I just turned 34 a few months ago. So the clock is ticking and I'm aligned. Now, I wouldn't call it motivation. It's like, I have to do this now, or it's not going to happen. I'm going to blow my chance with myself to see what I can do and create. And this just sets the tone for anything else that I would want to accomplish in the rest of my life when I'm, by the time I'm 90.
It reminds me of that, oh man, it's a quote that, let me see here, one second. It says, we must all suffer one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And that's what
Yes. Yeah. And it's so like, don't get me wrong. I love it and it's fun, but that's only surface and transient things.
Yeah. And
I just can't stop until I get there. And it's like, once I do get there, then it's a matter of enjoyment and enjoying the ride for however long I can make it last.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I walk away from this sport, I don't want to look back and say, what if I almost got there? What if I did? But I didn't, it's like, I can't live with that. So I think that's what keeps me going now is, I've just, I've recognized within myself, my power, my potential. And it's like, had I not gone through it this long, I would have missed that message for me also. And it's funny because like, I just feel so recharged right now. Even after this crazy year, I feel recharged to make another push. I feel like I'm just starting over. And I'm at year 19 and I feel so refreshed to like really push it now, which is weird. You would think I'd be tired and exhausted of it by now, or not love it anymore.
I love that you had a reset from this year because it was.
Oh my gosh, I needed it. If I'll tell you, let's see, July, I did the Orlando Pro and I got 7th, and I felt pretty good about that. I had a surgery thing like last March, so I didn't even expect to get on stage. My body was just moving in the direction we wanted it to, so we were like, let's just do it and see. So I did that first show and I got 7th, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm still not at my best, but I have room to improve. And then I did a show 2 weeks later. It was Virginia, Norfolk, and I expected to be better. I was leaner, but I was like, okay, I'll get a top 5. And I got 10th. And while I was standing there on stage in the first call out, I saw those girls and I was like, they are so beast. And my issue as a pro is there are no height classes. And my brain doesn't register, you can't look at yourself and someone at the same time.
Of course.
And all of these women, I'm short, I'm 5'2.5". And I'm looking at all these women and they're all big, just bigger than me. Their statures are bigger than me. So when I look at other women, I'm like, oh my God, they're so huge. When really it's like, I don't know how that translates proportion wise. But I was looking at these girls and I was like, I have no business being a pro figure competitor on this stage right now, because I couldn't see how I compared. Yeah. And I was like, I'm never going to get where I need to go. I'm sliding backwards. And I was actually on stage thinking this, and I was like, I'm not present right now. I'm not enjoying this show because I feel so defeated. And I was like, this might be the last show. This might be it for me, where I have to really reconsider where, can I even do this? And if this one judge didn't come back and tell me to try again, I don't know what I would have done this year. But he did. He said, just, hit it again in a couple weeks or months, focus on the conditioning. And for about a month, I was like, I don't know what to do. I didn't know if I had gotten better. I didn't know if I was making a wise decision. And I was like, I guess I'll just take it day by day. And we did. Like, my boyfriend and I had no idea what our plans were or what to expect. And so it was like a 6-week window between shows, but for a month I was just so undecided. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to do these shows for fun. Like, I'm going to take the pressure off of myself and see, just do it for the experience and to learn something. If I can learn anything, then it's not a loss. So I went back and I hit the Savannah Pro, and that, oh my God, I can't even, like, it's so funny reflecting on this now, but like, I went to that show just hoping to get a top 5, and something happened to where it just opened up a whole new mental shift for me. And in the call out, the judge moved me to what would split center. And that has never happened to me as a pro. I went to that spot where you're like, you're out of the corner of your eye, you're looking left and right. And you're like, how many people are on the other side of me? And it registered that I was like, oh, I'm in the top 2 spot. And I just like kind of freaked out for a minute because I was like, I didn't think I could do this. And then I was there, but the competition was still happening. So I almost like kind of lost my composure because I was so excited. But I was like, I needed that so badly for my confidence to even be thought of for a split second as potential as winning. And then I got moved, and I got moved again, and I ended up taking 4th. But that few seconds in that spot just relit my fire. And I was like, oh my God, for a second, they thought that I was good enough to do this. And then that was just the shift that I needed. So if that one judge didn't tell me to try again, I wouldn't have. And if that one judge didn't move me to that spot, I wouldn't have had that shift that I needed. And then a week later, I went and did the Phoenix show. And it was just funny because I'm looking at these girls and I'm thinking like, gosh, they're like so good. They're so peeled, and just I'm up there with Olympians now, like all these women who have idolized for years. I'm like standing next to them and I'm like, well, they've been to the Olympia 4, so they're going to get it or whatever. So I was just, again, completely shocked when I got moved to that top 2 spot again. And I'm looking at Zenobia and I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a fangirl. Like, she's so amazing. And I was like, how am I standing up next to these people right now? Like, you're Sandra Grajales and Heather Dees. And I'm just like, is this a dream? Like, is this a joke that I'm up here with you guys? So I just didn't have that confidence or sense of belonging until those shows. And then after that, I was like, okay, Autumn, you are material. Like, you have the tools and the potential. But if those 2 shows didn't happen that way, I don't know that I would have had that realization that I'm like hanging up here with these women.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by identity shifts. Like, I have had trouble identifying with myself as a pro, and that happened in 2018, but I didn't come back and celebrate. When I came back from that pro debut, my life was kind of falling apart. There was a lot of stuff going on that I needed to deal with. And it just kind of got swept under the rug a little bit. Yeah. So I never took a minute to stop and celebrate what I had been fighting for 15 years. So for me, it was almost like it hadn't happened. So here I am competing at the pro level, but emotionally and mentally, I wasn't pro in my mind. So it felt like I still didn't really quite belong. But the minute that shifted for me, even then, was when I did the Kentucky Muscle in October, just a couple months ago, which is here in my hometown. I mean, it's like 7 minutes from where I live. And the funny thing about that is that was the second show that I ever did in 2004 as an amateur. And I think around 2008 was when they brought Pro Figure to the Kentucky Muscle and made it a pro-am. And even back then I thought, well, I'll think of all the places in the world that Pro Figure shows happen. Why would this come to me if I wasn't supposed to do it someday? And so like last fall was the first time that I got to compete in the Kentucky Muscle as a pro. So it went full circle over like 18 years. And it wasn't until I went out for my presentation in front of my own city and was introduced by the MC as an IFBB pro, Autumn Cleveland. And I felt I could hear the audience cheering for me. And I was like, that was the closure that I needed to accept where I'm at now. Because like I said, that hadn't happened. So in my mind, that sealed off the separation point of being amateur to pro was just a few months ago when I was in front of my hometown and my family and my people. And I felt that like acceptance. So it's almost like my body and my actions are going through it, but my brain is almost on a delay. And so I've had to work really hard just these last couple months to be like, Autumn, it's like I have to identify with myself as an Olympian before it can happen. And so that's like really hard because it's almost like playing make believe. It's like,
yeah.
It's,
Brooke says this all the time. She's big into fake it till you make it. You have to kind of.
yeah.
Your humility is so charming. I just love it.
I hope it never changes.
Me too. Yeah, it's beautiful. This is where we fall in love with the competitors because it's relatable. Everybody feels this way. You know what I mean? And here you are on this elite pro athlete level, and it's very cool.
It's pretty like surreal, I'll say. Like I'll get messages from some like Olympians that I'm like, are they really messaging me and talking to me? Like, how do they even know I exist? But it's cool because they say such awesome, supportive things that I'll like, sometimes I'll read a conversation and I put my phone down and then I read it again just to check it. And I'm like, okay, like we're the same, not like, it's like my brain won't like make the connection.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, you deserve all of this. You've worked so hard, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, and you know, how you take us along on the journey, and there's so much more to come, so much more greatness, you know?
Well, I appreciate that recognition. That actually does feel really awesome, is to have the support and stuff while I'm going through all these shifts and changes. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about these things.
Yeah. Don't ever change. You are loved and accepted for who you are by the right people. Absolutely.
Really awesome thing to say. Thank you.
So what's the plan for what's the future?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I've been like spending a few weeks with myself to lay this out. And so I have work to do. That's no question. And I was actually super happy with my conditioning this year. I was shocked at my conditioning. I didn't believe I could get to that point, especially over the course of 7 months of competing. So that was unexpected. But what I did know, because I didn't take much of an off season off, this contradicts what I said earlier about taking time.
Sure.
There was a crossover point this time where I went the other way. It was like I'm getting on stage more frequently and sooner than I should have. But I kind of have this mentality now that it's like, if I catch a wave, I'm going to ride it. And if I don't, I'm going to back off. And so I didn't get to build the way that I should have last year because I chose to get on stage anyway. So what I knew going into 22, no matter what, was that I was going to have to take time to build up my weak points because they weren't going to grow in prep. So what I focused on last year was testing my ability to get conditioned and improving my posing, which sounds ridiculous because I'm a posing coach, but I don't have a posing coach. So my feedback on posing comes directly from the judges. So the more I was like, at least I can get really good at my posing this year by showing up and getting my feedback. And so I feel like I really tackled those two areas, but this year I know that I need to bring more back density and specifically like low lat development. And the challenge with that is I've decided to be more accepting and open about this now, but like I've been dealing with scoliosis my entire life. I just thought if I ignored it, it would go away. So I finally decided like, okay, that's not the right assessment here. And so with my scoliosis, certain muscle groups aren't developed the same or at all. Like it's been up until a few months ago, I almost couldn't feel my low lats because of my spine and rib cage. So the more I'm learning about my own back and my body, I'm like I'm prioritizing actually like working with my scoliosis issues, first of all, so that I can develop my back. So both of those things are going to take time, like the process of gaining muscle and addressing those issues. But that's important for me because like, I don't think I'm going to get big. I don't think I have the genetic capacity to get big. So being more symmetrical is kind of my weapon. So I need to really prioritize my symmetries. And so I am right now kind of going through my body and saying like, which muscle needs a little bit more attention, either for the balance of figure or to correct asymmetries as best as I'm going to be able to. So for the next 6 months, that's what I'm doing. I'm putting muscle in the right areas where the judges told me to, which is my back, and correcting my asymmetries and taking all of the advice that the judges gave me for my posing last year and still implementing that. Then I think right now it looks like I'd like to hit my first show around like September, if I think I'm ready, developed enough. So I got, I think 9 points for the 2022 Olympia right now, which I'm very happy with. And I'm going to take the time to correct my weak points, but then I'm going to come back and hit it this fall, hopefully starting like September, and, you know, either aim to win a show or at least accumulate enough points to go in on by November 20th to the Olympia. That's my plan.
Sounds like a great plan. I wanted to say 2 things. One, we all know that. I think you probably know this, that Sid Gillian has scoliosis as well.
Oh my gosh. She gives me hope. And the best part is when I was between those shows in Savannah and Phoenix, I had actually hurt my back deadlifting like the week before, and I was kind of in a panic about it. It totally affected my posing for Savannah and it looked horrible, but I was in actual pain. And when I was on my way out to Arizona, I saw Sydney and posted out there. She's like, oh, I'm out here in Arizona. I was like, I'm just going to reach out to her and see. And I knew the Olympia was coming up. So I was like, she's going to be busy. I don't even know if she will work with me. And I did do one online session with her last year, and she really put some things in perspective. So I had a good experience with that, but I only did that one session. So I just reached out to her and I was like, hey, I'm on my way out to Phoenix. If you have any time, I was like, I'll pay you double. I was like, just if you have any advice for like the scoliosis thing. And she did, she made time for me. And I still am so grateful for that, because she didn't have to do that. She was busy. But she made time for me to go over my posing, and she helped me address my scoliosis issues, which is something that I don't trust people with. A lot of people are good at calling me out for what I'm doing, but they're not good at providing actual solutions. But she did. And even now I'm like, man, I'm so glad that she was willing to help me in a dire moment and share her experiences with me. And so like, that kind of gives me hope to be like, okay, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be like the perfect package and deliver it that way. And so like, that's inspiring. She's inspiring to me in that regard.
Absolutely. Yep. That's what I was thinking. I thought we've got a Miss Olympia who has scoliosis. So
yeah, what a perfect example.
So awesome. And the fact that you reached out to her for posing, you know, I know people always point out Kenny Wallach, but I mean, Sid is the queen for figure posing. So
I worked with Kenny for several years, and he taught me a lot of things. The thing that I struggle with right now is I have relationships with judges that have influenced my posing the most. And if I'm going to teach someone else posing, I need to hear it directly from the source.
Yeah.
And what I would try to be careful of, I've actually, during COVID, I reached out to Candace Lewis.
Yeah.
And Ricardo and Shawnee Grant.
Yes.
And Sydney. And I was like, if I want to learn, why am I not just going straight to the best?
Yeah.
You got 3 Miss Olympias right there. And I did one session with each of them. But the reason that I did one session was because I also don't want to accidentally adopt other posing coaches' techniques.
Yeah.
Now, those sessions specifically were for me, because I kind of admitted with myself, my posing isn't getting attention that it needs. I can teach everybody else all day, but I wasn't addressing my own posing. Just like I said earlier, like every doctor needs a doctor. It would be like me not going to the doctor for like, years. So I was like, if I want to get better, then I need to reach out and ask for help. But who do I ask for help? Because I don't trust anybody. And Kenny's awesome. Kenny's very good. But my concern was, I was like, if I do too much with him, what if I accidentally start to replicate or become that style? And I look at it in the way of art. Like, I'm an artist. And so like, I don't copy other artists' art. Right. I might be inspired by their art, and I might learn more about the technique that they use. but we each create something different. So that's why I won't go see a posing coach, the same posing coach, too many times, because I don't want to accidentally pick up what they are, I don't want that to influence too much. I want to learn from them, but I don't want it to be a replication of that. And I don't want to take away from their business either, or their school of thought. So what I do is I go to posing clinics, I ask the judges direct questions, and then once in a while I will listen to there's a fire truck. I'll listen to what another posing coach says briefly. My house isn't on fire. I hope someone else's house isn't on fire. Sorry about that. So yeah, I don't want to there's a kind of a balance there. Like, I want to learn from the best, but I don't want to just copy and then regurgitate. And so I'm very selective and careful with when I do ask for help. Shane helps me a ton, my coach. But I do that because I need that separation between like my posing coaching and everyone else's posing coaching. Now, for example, Sydney helped me in a way that was different than other people. So that's kind of why I went to her twice, because that was such a specific thing. Yeah. But in my case, like if I had a posing client and they had scoliosis issues like I do, I would do what I could with them. But at some point I would say, hey, maybe you should reach out to Sydney because she helped me. And so like, I think each posing coach brings their own style and their own forte. Yes. And the way that I teach posing is kind of different. And I like that. I want to keep it different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's important advice for anyone who's looking to get into a category, to not get married too much to whoever their favorite person is, because you can pick, oh, I like her front pose, but I see what she does on her quarter turns, you know, and I mean, even more so when you have, like women's physique or something, there's so many different ways to do mandatories, but I think it's good to work with. This isn't the same. Posing coaching is not the same as getting a prep coach. It's not something you have to necessarily build a relationship with. Yeah. It's something you can, and as your body evolves, your posing changes as well. So it's not like you should revisit it over time as well, because not only does posing evolve, but your body evolves.
And that's the thing I have to kind of constantly remind people is like, it's like trying on outfits. Like, when you try on what's trendy and you're like, this is not for my body. Like, that's for everyone else's body, but not for me. That's the way I feel about posing, is it's like, you have to recognize what your strengths and what your structures are. And it's not a one size fits all thing, but I will try things with clients, posing clients, to be like, let's see how this looks on you. And we toss out what doesn't work, but it's all about delivery. Like, there's no right or wrong or even actual secrets about posing. It's how I can translate it and break it down for someone else to be able to digest, because if they can't digest it, how will they actually understand it? And so each coach brings a different delivery, posing coach. But you're right, there's not like a one method or one size fits all. And I actually think this is cool. Like, some people will get my posing course or do one-on-one posing sessions with me, but then they might reach out to another posing coach for like a session or two to add just something different. And now they've created their own way of posing. It's not all mine and it's not all that person's. It's like a combination. So that's why I find unique, is when I'm watching the Olympia, I look at everybody's posing. I'm like, they're so different. Not every single person does the exact same things, but you'll see trends and tendencies amongst posing, but they all do it in a slightly different way. And that's like we were talking about earlier. It's just kind of makes it more beautiful to see all these little distinctions between them. But if everybody had the same posing coach, that would start to show up.
You have to get the basics down, and then you adjust things to, how your body is, how it's evolving. I mean, we talked about this on the last podcast about how, you should be posing throughout your off season, your improvement season, and during your prep, because your body is changing. And, as you lose body fat, some things might not look as good as they did when you were doing it in your off season. So it's about what's going to look best when you step on stage, and you're just not going to know until you have tried, a lot of different angles.
Yeah. And even now, like my posing, I've thrown out poses. I've added some new ones. I've tweaked some because of the package that I'm bringing and the level now. Like there's amateur posing and then pro posing. And then what I'm telling myself now, I'm like, okay, well, what's Olympia posing? Like that's a different, it's a whole different performance.
Yeah. So what was your, let's see, what was your last two shows? What did your places end up being? I don't think you mentioned that.
Okay. So let's see, I left off at the Phoenix show. So Savannah, I got 4th. Phoenix, I got 2nd. And that lit me up. I was like, I'm close, really close. And then a month later was the show here, the Kentucky Muscle. And I was like, well, I'm going to do it because it's easy. I mean, easy, like location wise, like I didn't have to travel. And I was really confident then. And I ended up getting 2nd place at that one. So it was encouraging because I was like, I'm almost winning. I'm almost there. I'm missing the Olympia qualification by 1 spot, it's still crazy to say that. But I was reaching the point where I was like, do I keep going or do I stop? Do I call it quits here and take an off season? And I based that on the fact that if it's like one of those things where if you can't stop thinking about it, you have to do it. And I remember I did the Kentucky Muscle and I thought, okay, like I got 2nd, I should be happy with that. And I went to sleep that night and I was like, ugh. I was like, I have to go again. I have to do it again. And I rolled over to my boyfriend. I was like, Derek, I was like, there's a show in St. Petersburg next weekend. And it was supposed to be my birthday. I was supposed to take time off and get with my family and do fun things. And I was like, I have to do it because I just got 2nd at the last 2 shows. You would think that like I'm getting closer. And so I did. I went to St. Petersburg. Now that was a different feel for me. The Phoenix show and the Kentucky Muscle really, I felt like were my shows, like emotionally and just there's certain shows that I do that I'm like, I belong here. This is not just for like the outcome, but like the experience or like the city. And when I went to St. Petersburg, I don't know if it's because I didn't have time to mentally prepare myself for it, but it was a really fast turnaround that I didn't expect. Like I didn't know I could make a show happen that fast. Like I booked the flight the next day, got the hotels, got all my prep, meal prep, everything done so I could hop on a plane 5 days later, which I didn't anticipate. And that kind of threw me off mentally. And when I got there, I was like, something just doesn't feel good to me. Like I wasn't connected with it and it's like my body was there, but I wasn't present. And I don't know why, but like the show experience itself felt extremely rushed. And I don't know. I just didn't feel like I went out there and did what I felt like I could do. My presentation felt really rushed. And I don't know why that was. I still don't know why that was. So I don't know. I went out there and like, I was leaner. I looked better, but I ended up getting 4th. Okay. So I went from 2nd, 4th, 2nd, and then 4th again. And I called my coach and I was like, you know what? That's good. I got some Olympia points for 2022. I think we can call it a season now. Yeah. And on the way home, I was like, I'm just going to ask the promoter for the Texas show. I told myself, I was like, I am not doing that show. I'm not dieting for 3 more weeks. Yep. Like I was convincing myself not to do it then. I was like, I'm just going to find out some information. So I asked her a few questions about the show and I just left it at that. And then I caught myself looking at plane tickets and then I caught myself looking at hotels. And every day that went by after that hurricane show, I was like, why am I every day having to convince myself reasons to not do this show? Obviously something's still there. So I took a week off to relax. And then I called my coach. I was like, Shane, I was like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, I have to go again. I have to do this one more show because I wasn't happy with the placement or the experience that I had at Hurricane. And I just couldn't end on that note because my confidence had dipped. And I was like, if I go do Texas and I can have closure with that, then I can go into off season. And so it was funny because he was doing the same thing. He was like, I didn't want to put pressure on you, but I just feel like it's like we both knew that I was going to go again, but we both didn't discuss it for a full week. And so when I went and did Texas, I felt way better. I love competing with Sandy as my head judge. Even if I got last place, I feel like I am thoroughly considered. And I don't know, I just love the way that she judges. And so just knowing that she was going to be a judge there, I was like, I want to do that just to end my season with Sandy, like where I know that it'll be fun. And so I went, and I don't even know if my package was better. It may have been about the same, which I was happy to, like, again, pushing my body through that many shows. I was happy about that. So I went out and did that show, and I ended up getting third there. And I was entirely happy with that because I felt like I had presented my best, and I loved the experience. I felt very present and connected. And then I was happy to wrap it up. So that's what happened this year. That's crazy. It's like a lot.
I was watching on social media, and you kept doing it. You do like a live video after everyone or the next day. And I was just like, good Lord, this girl is just like ticking them off. But it was really fun to hear the report back every time. So, I mean, it was exciting to watch, but I'm excited for your improvement season and what you're going to bring.
I am too. I think taking a break will do me some good, but I'm already like, I already feel refreshed, and I'm relieved to have a 6-month window to like actually get work done, but it's not off time. Like that's the other hard part is it's like I'm back in prep. I'm just more fueled.
Yeah. One of the things that I was going to ask is with your back development, have you looked into like the new fit machines at all? The electrical stim? Have you heard of that?
I've heard a little bit of them, but there is a lot that I haven't tried yet that are even like the most basic things. And so like this was a few days ago.
Yeah.
I connected with someone who works specifically with like scoliosis and function and muscle development.
Nice.
So I actually got with her and did an assessment, and like she's already provided me with some kind of programming type things, because with the scoliosis, it's not just neurological. It's like, it's how I didn't have an understanding of what was actually going on with my bones. And now that she broke it down for me to understand, I have awareness of like what my actual issues are, that like what the problem is. So those are things I need to work on first, is understanding my problem. And then even the most basic, like we're just starting with breathing exercises.
Yeah.
So that's where I need to start first. But I'm also open to like exploring other things that are like supported. Sure. But it's like going back to the absolute basics again, like when you first started lifting weights, but you started with resistance bands, you know? So I've got some starting over to do first.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to keep progressing in that way this year too. Like, honestly, like if I can look at my competition photos this coming year and see more balance and just a straighter spine, I'll consider that a huge accomplishment. And those are things that other people don't know. In fact, it gets so frustrating when people are like, oh my gosh, this is almost as bad as people coming out with like just their comments on like what they think what my attractiveness is based on my muscles. It's equally as frustrating when people message me and they're like, hey, I noticed your back's uneven, like you need to do this. And I'm like, you don't know anything about my problems. You don't know anything about my issues. Don't impose your thoughts on me or your what's so-called solutions without even understanding. I don't even understand. So like they kind of give me unsolicited advice, or this is worse, they'll just call it out and point it out. But I'm like, okay, well, you're not offering to help me fix it.
Right.
And when I say that, it's delicate, because what I mean is, I don't mean like what you think I should do. I mean, did you have my exact issue and you found someone, a professional that helped you? That's what I mean by help. So it is frustrating because they don't do it as much anymore, but they would look at my progress pictures and be like, oh, you're way uneven, you're leaning to this side. And I'm like, those aren't like easy things to fix. That's an actual problem.
Right. Yeah. People are quick to point stuff out without thinking about, like you said, if you're not offering a solution, like an actual evidence-based
professional solution. Yeah. And that's kind of been the issue with acne too. Like, again, this is a 20-year battle here, and people are like, have you tried this?
Have you tried washing your
herb?
face?
Yeah, have you tried just existing? But I'm like, I've tried almost everything. The only thing I hadn't tried was Accutane. So it sucks now because people will message me with these like horror stories and why Accutane is so bad. And they're like, there's other things you can do. And I'm like, oh, like what? What do you suggest that I haven't tried? So you're right. It's easy for people to pick on things and think it's so simple, but that's why I don't impose advice on people. Right. Even if I think it would help them, I never go to somebody and just like type what I think they should do. If they ask me, I'm happy to share.
Why you share your own experiences, because it does open the door for somebody to learn from you, and then you don't have to impose your advice on somebody else because you're sharing your experience and they can glean from it whatever they want.
Yeah. And I appreciate when people do that with me.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually had a client that went on Accutane, and it was pretty rough. I think it was either 3 or 4 months, or 2 or 3 months. She had a lot of joint pain and had to lay low on the squatting and the heavier compound lifts.
I've been wondering if that's going to happen.
Yeah, but I want you to know the outcome was fantastic for her as far as like clearing up the cystic acne. I think she still has scarring.
I've heard some really, really good things I would say most of the feedback I've gotten from people on Accutane is positive.
Yes.
There's only been a few little negative or scares in there, and I appreciate those things too. But
yeah, it works.
I don't know if I'm just like lucky right now, but I am super happy. This is like I think week 10. And my dermatologist is great. I got my blood work done the week after prep. So some things were like, and I don't know how I didn't know this. Like my white blood cell count was high. My liver enzymes were high. My kidneys were strained. And I'm like, I didn't actually think about, she had explained to me, she was like, if your body is going through a lot in prep, there's a lot of byproducts that it's filtering out. Like I didn't know that intense training would show up like that on a blood work. Yeah. So she explained to me, because I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, I had no idea, because I feel great. And never in prep, not once did I feel like my body was working against me.
Yeah.
So when I saw those things, I was like, oh my God, am I dying? And she explained that the intensity of prep, it's kind of like just the stress of that. And so because of that, we both agreed, like, I'd rather start at a lesser dose to give my body some recovery. Yeah. But I started Accutane like a week after prep, and it was like a super mild. And then
it is
a month later,
it's hard it is hard on your kidneys, right? This is what the blood work is for. It's hard on your kidneys and your liver. Are those what's affecting? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so like, that's what she wants to keep an eye on. Now, the odd thing is I've been prescribed spironolactone since I was 18. Okay. So when I say we've tried everything, I mean, we've tried everything for a long time. Yeah. And I didn't realize that, I mean, I knew it was a strain on the kidneys sort of because of it's a diuretic.
Yeah.
But I thought I had been doing a pretty good job of balancing my water and my sodium. So I never felt bad. I didn't think, but now that she started to taper me off with spironolactone as we've increased the Accutane. Yeah. And I didn't realize that, I guess for the last so many years, I've been almost combating like daily dehydration.
Yes.
So if I've not been able to function and feel good through prep, being dehydrated for like over a decade. Yeah. I'll just say battling that. Yeah. Now, as we've come off, I've noticed differences in my body as far as like, I don't look as dry, but I'm like, oh my gosh, is this what being hydrated feels like? So I actually feel pretty good. So even if the Accutane is like still a risk of like drying out your dehydration, I guess, I think the balance of coming off of spironolactone, it's no different, or I don't feel any different, but she does want to keep an eye on the kidney markers. And like a few weeks, I think I get my blood work done every 2 weeks. 2 weeks after I got that first blood work done, everything had come back into balance, or at least down. I mean, the kidney markers are kind of still like a little bit higher, I think. So this is like 10 weeks. And after prep was done, it's like my body's exactly where it should be weeks later. So I'm glad that she's so cautious. And we just started the full dose 2 weeks ago. So I'm just now getting to the higher dosage. And I'm like, every day I'm like, oh, when's it coming? Like, what are the bad side effects coming? But like the worst I have is like some chapped lips. I don't feel the muscular or the joint pains that I've heard other people talk about, but I would almost attribute that just to being regularly hydrated now.
Yeah.
So.
I was on Girldactone for a little over a year, I think. And I remember when I went off it too, that I was like, I feel better, like more energy in the gym. I didn't feel like I was being held back a little bit. So I think once you get through all this, I think it's going to help your performance in the gym for sure.
You want to hear something that's ridiculous?
No, go ahead.
I did not know until a couple weeks ago a light bulb went off. I read this one time like years ago, and I guess I just didn't really wrap my head around it. I didn't know that spironolactone makes it harder to gain muscle.
Yes, it does, because it suppresses testosterone.
That's how you would think I would know those things, and it just never clicked in my head. And so as soon as we came off of it, that's when I registered that I was like, oh my God, what if I can gain muscle so much easier this year just from coming off of spironolactone? What if I actually gain some muscle this year? The way that other girls, because sometimes I look at myself, I'm like, why is it so hard for me to get big?
Right.
With as hard as I work.
Yeah.
I'm like, why am I not packing on like, 20 pounds of muscle a year? But but I was like, man, what if just coming off of that one acne medication makes it easier for me to actually build muscle now?
I noticed strength increase in the gym because it was the same thing. I thought, I've had my hormones tested before. My testosterone is actually kind of low for a female.
Oh, okay.
And, and then I knew going on this drug too, it was like, okay, we're lowering it even more, and you're just like, no, I want all the testosterone that my body is going to produce. It's ridiculous. But
yeah,
I was having hormonal acne along my jawline and my neck. And that's when because I was on an antibiotic for a couple of years as well.
Same.
Yeah. So I get it, but I've not had cystic acne. That cleared it up for me. So I didn't have to do anything more. I don't have great skin, but I mean, what do you
That's good to me. But yeah, I think that's the frustrating thing is like blood work, like hormonally. I mean, I've never been diagnosed with like PCOS or anything. I don't even have enough symptoms to like think that I have that.
Yeah.
But it's
Candace Lewis has PCOS, which is crazy.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it shows up in different forms and in different degrees with other women. But if I was just guessing, I could have sworn that I had that, if that's what was making my acne so bad. Yeah. But like I said, when I get my blood work done, everything is in a good range when it's supposed to be. So I'm like, yeah, then what is it? So, yeah. And the problem is like, I guess with like my lifestyle shifting so often, even if my hormones were regular for 3 or 4 months, that's probably going to change anyway. So that's why I think where I'm at the end of my rope with like for Accutane, because since I was 15 years old, I've had cystic painful, bad acne. And yeah, I've tried eliminating things over the years. I've tried all the medications. I've tried all the topicals. Yeah. And my blood work doesn't indicate an actual
hormonal problem.
Yeah. So I don't know what, I know acne is tied genetically. So I'm like, maybe my genetics just are susceptible to acne. And that's, so I'm hoping that this just improves it, because it's hard. Like, yeah, it's the weird thing to me is that I chose an industry that I'm constantly judged on how I look. And the irony of that is I was bullied bullied and judged in high school because of how I looked. Right. So I'm like, why did I fall in love with this? So, but the hard part now is like, you have to be on all the time. And those are like these expected images of like, it's just, it's what humans do. They see something and they make an assessment or a judgment off of it. And it's like, why did I choose that industry where it's like, you have to have a good face on all the time, yet I'm like having these acne issues. So like, it's caused a lot of stress and pressure to me to look a certain way. Yeah. to my community, like to my just all of my roles, I guess, because I know I'm going to be judged.
When you're, you describe yourself as someone who's a people pleaser, who's kind of sensitive. And, let me just say, like, you're pretty. So you're a beautiful woman.
You're pretty.
Like when people, so then you're like, I don't ever want people to see me when I'm not pretty because they've labeled me pretty. You know what I mean? So you're like, I don't want to go out when I don't have makeup on, or I don't want to go out when my skin is broken out, because now they're going to be like, oh, she's not that pretty. You know what I mean? Which they're not, they don't care, but we care because we care about, like, we've tried really hard to create this image. So
yeah, that, first of all, that's like a really awesome thing of you to say. That makes me feel really good. But it's funny because like every day my boyfriend is just like, he makes me feel beautiful, like perfect with him. And yeah, it's just an image thing. So I do struggle with that, where it's like I see these other girls, like even in workout videos, I'm like, how are they so put together? Like who? And in my head, I'm going, I don't have time to put makeup on, and I don't like the way it feels on my skin before I go to the gym. But like, it does change the way people perceive things. So it's been a huge step for me to even acknowledge or talk about this stuff, because I've tried to like hide it for so long. And I'm starting to get more comfortable putting myself out in front of others with like just what I am, like no makeup. I still like, now I actually like to put makeup on. It's not such a burden. I actually enjoy it kind of. But I also feel more comfortable to be more vulnerable and raw and exposed, because I've had to really ask myself, I'm like, what is my purpose? And the way that I use social media, I think is different. And I kind of struggle sometimes with the word like influencer. Like, I'm not here to influence anybody, but I am here to, like, I've got things to say.
And being
I have experiences to share.
I think in being honest is what is going to be the, the draw, because I think people think about a lot what they want to put out there, and you're just like, this is what's going on in my life right now. That's why, it's kind of sucks when people pigeonhole you into a specific topic, and you're like, I have all these other things in my life that I love and that are going on, and I'm going to share what I want to share. It doesn't have to all be building. It doesn't have to all be, I'm a parent. You're
more. And that's what I mean about having bodybuilding as a platform right now in my life. But like 10 years from now, I don't know if that's going to be the case, but will people still want to be there? I don't know. And that's my biggest life struggle, is that I love too many things. I'm passionate about too many things at once. And it's like, I have to choose. And right now I choose bodybuilding because there's an expiration date on that, like, time, age. But like I said, like, there's other autumns.
The thing is, you're going to carry that, however it looks, onto the whole rest of your life. It's kind of, it's part of the reason why I love doing this podcast, and even doing the interviews with, we have the girls who have just gotten into the industry over the last 5 years. We have people like you who've been in it a long time. And I have people that I've interviewed who have retired. And I love seeing, where is bodybuilding in your life right now? And what are you doing? Because you're a human being, so much more than just.
Oh yeah. I love those things, like where you get to actually see how people it's so different. Right. It's all a different chapter.
Yeah. Well, Autumn, what is your final message that you want women to take away from all this? You shared so much really, really great stuff. It was just such a pleasure.
Gosh, that is actually a tough one, because there's a lot. I would almost consider it more of like a life message, but it does translate to bodybuilding. But like, I think I would love to see women take more action and assertiveness in creating their lives. And like, bodybuilding is a good place to start because it gives us a visual. But like, the things and lessons that I've learned from bodybuilding are way more powerful than bodybuilding itself. And you start to learn just how powerful you can be, like through bodybuilding. And so, there's that progressive like tests that we go through, and like, we're being tested by life. We test ourselves, but each time you come on the other side of this challenge with more understanding and like lessons and like gains and stuff. But like, I don't know, I think we're bodybuilding competitions, and I say this to my clients when they first hire me, you're not hiring me for a competition, you're hiring me to get to your own next level and like personal growth. And bodybuilding is like the thing that's in front of us, like the action right now, but like you're actually here to change and morph and become a new person, or not, I shouldn't say new person, become the best version of yourself. And so it's like this whole thing is all about reaching our highest potentials and becoming our highest selves. It's just that bodybuilding is a great place to start doing that. And so I think it's important that you keep asking yourself, well, how, you know, what more can I be? So it keeps us progressing in the sport. But like you go beyond the sport and you're like, you know, what do I actually want? And you just kind of start to create those visions and those pieces, and those alignments with like your purpose more so than, so it's translatable to bodybuilding. But when you think outside of that, it's like you are in charge of your life and you're responsible for that, and you have the ability to change and create into whatever you want to be, and getting your vision clear on, you know, what you're supposed to be and who you're supposed to be and what the most powerful that you want to become. You just start to create that vision and then align your actions just like you do with bodybuilding, and own it.
Absolutely. And it's, you know what, it's all these series of experiences that are, it sucks that we gather all the experiences through our whole life and then we don't get to live that life.
Right.
Because it's the end. But you gather those things along the way. It's creating who you are. And that's what I can appreciate about you, is because it looks like you're just grabbing all the opportunities to create all these life experiences. And that's making you this awesome person.
Well, that's what I feel lucky and fortunate to have these things happen to me and for me to take those lessons. But I feel like it's like my humanly purpose and duty to like share those with people and pass it on.
Yeah.
Like I would never want to be selfish with those lessons or things. And so like I get excited when someone is receptive to those messages, because it's like I get to experience them, but then I get to share them, and that feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, this is wonderful. Well,
Yeah, I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on this.
just fantastic. Where can people find you if they're looking for you, to follow you, or for coaching?
Obviously, Instagram is probably the main one, the automatic account. I have a YouTube. I haven't done a lot with it lately. So I do have a YouTube channel, just Autumn Cleveland, but for coaching stuff, I'm actually shifting my business things around right now. Posing is taking more of a priority. So like for most, I'd say like posing stuff through Instagram or my website, autumncleveland.com. That's just that needs a little reworking also. So for posing or competition prep, that's usually how people reach me.
Well, you've been busy, you know, so it's hard to keep
with all I'm trying to grow my business as much as I'm trying to grow in bodybuilding, and that's hard to do both at once.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we wish you the best with your off season. I'd love to have you come back on sometime.
Oh yeah, me too. I'd love to touch base again. That'd be cool.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for listening and watching to another episode of The Women's Fittest. You can find us on Instagram at The Women's Fittest. You can find me on Instagram at BuffCake22, and listen to wherever you find your favorite podcast. Remember that healthy looks different on everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.